What up, South Hills, children of the hills have eyes, etc. Today, the discussion is going to be about, as you can see on this screen in front of you, the Articles of Confederation. So, basically, we talked about how we became a nation. All right, 1783, we win, woohoo! Wow, now what? So the real difficult part about administering a nation and keeping a nation together is what happens after the revolution. That's the most important period of any nation's history. So, how did we get through it? How did it all go down? That's the discussion for today. The discussion is about the Articles of Confederation. So, first things first, these are the Articles of Confederation. The Articles of Confederation was actually the first Constitution of the United States. That's right, folks. We actually had an entirely different Constitution at one point in our history. In 1777, they ratified the Articles of Confederation. Now, that's 5 years before the war is over. So this is during the war, right after we signed the Declaration of Independence in 1776. So the question is, okay, what's these laws all about? Well, in general, these laws were hastily slapped together really quickly to get us through the war phase. Now, when I say hastily slapped together, I mean that these laws weren't debated, they weren't discussed, there wasn't a whole lot of time, all right? They kind of just threw them together to just keep things flowing in a semi-orderly way in our nation while we're at war with Britain. And the intention always was, once we get through the war, we'll look back at the Articles of Confederation and improve upon them. So, improve upon them. How much improvement was needed? Well, let's just say enough that we just trashed it. The Articles of Confederation were not good. And it really, really was shown after the war was over how bad the Articles of Confederation really was. So, what are the Articles of Confederation? Well, first of all, here's our first Constitution. In fact, fun fact, the Articles of Confederation are how we got our name. It was in the Articles of Confederation that the first term, the United States of America, was coined. We kept that part of the Articles, but not much else. So it was a carryover from the Revolutionary War. Like I said, it was created during the war. Now, problems. Okay. In order for a nation to function, a nation has to be able to protect itself. It has to be able to raise money to pay for things that a nation might need, for instance, an army. A nation needs to be able to protect its citizens, to keep its citizens safe, healthy, and prosperous. The big things that we all want as citizens of any nation. The Articles of Confederation was essentially trash at that. None of it was functional. So let's talk about some of the big problems. First things first. The Articles of Confederation, in general, was acknowledging or was built upon the premise that each colony, now a state of the United States, is an independent miniature nation. And that instead of us being a completely united country under one government, it was more like the Articles of Confederation tried to create independent nations that were just really close friends with each other. Like, oh, Virginia's just really close friends with Maryland, but not under the same nation. Now, how is that going to work? The answer is, it ain't. It's not going to work. There was no central government under the Articles of Confederation. Like a central government is one place that rules over an entire nation. Like a president is part of a strong central government. By central, you think about power being put into a small container over a large nation. The Articles of Confederation did not allow for a president. There was no president at first when we had a country. The Articles of Confederation did not allow the federal government, which is the government over all the states, to raise taxes. So they couldn't raise revenue. They could have no money. Stuff costs money. Everything in life, kids, costs money. It's a fact that you're going to have to learn. Nothing's for free in this world. So not able to raise money means the federal government can't raise an army. But how do you maintain a nation without being able to have an army to protect said nation? What if Canada decided to invade America? Would we be able to defend ourselves? The answer is no, not really. Can't. The Articles of Confederation had no court system, no judges, no what we call a judiciary. So the lack of a court system makes it so, A, If someone gets in trouble and violates the law, there's no one there to enforce the law. Judges also review laws to make sure that they are legal. You can make a law that violates another law. Well, you can't have that. That doesn't work. So judges kind of sort that stuff out. It's called judicial review. So we have problems and problems and problems with the Articles of Confederation. And these weaknesses would be exposed pretty quickly. So the federal government was far too weak. That's the central government. Can't raise taxes. Can't raise an army. Couldn't make, didn't mention this. Since we had no president, we had no ability to make treaties with other nations. The power to make a treaty, which is an agreement between two nations, was left in the hands of a group of people known as the Congress. That doesn't work. There's way too many voices to agree on what parts of a treaty should be. So the Articles of Confederation lacked that ability. I didn't mention this. You couldn't regulate commerce between states. So basically, under the Articles of Confederation, with every state being its own nation, they'd each print their own money. So you'd show up in Virginia with your Massachusetts money and be like, hey, I want to buy that plow over there. And they'd be like, no, you're not going to buy that plow because you got the wrong kind of money. It's like, are we all Americans? That was a problem, to not be able to seamlessly trade and citizens be able to go from state to state to state and easily purchase things. It was a mess. And of course, like I mentioned, there's no court system. So the Articles of Confederation was just essentially a really weak constitution. And eventually it would be exposed as weak, and we did something about it. So here's all the problems with the Articles of Confederation. I've actually shown you this picture before on a Constitution Day discussion. And basically, all the things that I mentioned right here are bam, right there on that really cool drawing of the Articles of Confederation. And the poor Articles looking all sad there. Oh, I'm going to circle him. Wait, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to make him happy. No, you smile. You a happy law. He wasn't. He was sad. So no president, no judges, no judiciary, no tax base, no army funding, no navy funding. When I say military, army, navy, they kind of all lump together. Weak foreign policy, no trade policy. What were we thinking? Well, you know what we were thinking after a short 10 years? We need something better. So this is the event that really kind of was the eye-opener for America. Hey, the Articles of Confederation are not working properly. All of those problems kind of came to a head with an event known as Shays' Rebellion. It was led by a former Continental Army soldier named Daniel Shays. He had seen a lot of action in the war, and then he went home after the war. And part of one of the issues with our system at that point is, since the federal government couldn't raise money, they couldn't directly pay soldiers. They had to rely on the states that they came from to voluntarily give money to the federal government to be able to pay these soldiers. Daniel Shays was essentially left out in the cold. He wasn't paid the amount of money that he was promised. He's already kind of on the wrong foot. Now, he goes back to Massachusetts. He lives out in the boonies of Massachusetts. He's not on the coast where all the people are, or the cities like Boston are. And he's a subsistence farmer. He basically survives by farming and selling his crops. But oftentimes, the way it worked in America is that whenever it was a lean year, your crops failed or was a drought or whatnot, in order to get what you needed to survive, store owners would allow people to purchase stuff on what's called credit. When you purchase on credit, you are essentially saying, I don't have the money now, but I'll have the money later. And when I get the money later, not only will I pay it back, I'll give you a little extra money because you were kind enough to give it to me up front. That's how credit works. Well, that dried up. Merchants and storekeepers and businessmen and the like, they all started demanding cold, hard cash, no credit. And this was a really tough time. Okay, these subsistence farmers, which is the majority of what people did, are suffering. They're not able to get what they need, even just to survive and for their families to be successful. And you have to imagine these people are kind of upset. A guy like Daniel Shays is now not able to get the food he needs for his family. He's struggling to make money, make ends meet, and he sacrificed. He was wounded in battle at Saratoga. So he sacrificed for his nation, who was getting nothing back in return. So in comes Shays' Rebellion. There's a slow but sure swelling of anger and frustration towards debt collectors and towards merchants, people who were doing well, and Shays was going to do something about it. So the question is, what does Shays do about that? So Shays was able to, with the help of other individuals who were also former soldiers in the Continental Army, they were able to piece together basically a mob, a militia group of men with guns who were also had the same grievances against the basic economic system that was happening in Massachusetts. And what they were attempting to do was basically exact extreme change. They literally were like, let's rebel. Rawr. And these 4,000 men, in the end, they tried to take over an army depot, like basically a cache of weapons that was housed in a place called Springfield, Massachusetts. And they had this whole battle plan drawn up. They were going to attack from 4 different angles, and then they messed it all up. Basically, long story short, the rebellion was put down. But what it really exposed was the lack of ability to raise an army to deal with disturbances and unrest in America, because the state of Massachusetts actually had to raise its own militia. The governor of Massachusetts raised a private army, like literally funded through private channels, not government tax revenue, to put together an army, a militia, to put down Shays' Rebellion. And so this was just like a big eye opener. Okay, look, we can't have people just randomly rebelling in our country without the federal government being able to respond to that rebellion. So Shays' Rebellion, although kind of a small event in history, was a big eye opener in history. And our founding fathers then pledged to, okay, we got to do something about this. And then in 1787, they would call a constitutional convention. And that's going to be our next big topic of discussion. One of the most important aspects of this class in understanding U.S. history is to understand how laws are formed and applied in this nation. And how do those laws affect you? And how will they continue to affect you throughout the remainder of your life? The Constitution is one of the most important things to really, truly understand. So that's the next big topic. But for now, you're going to write all these awesome notes. Shays' Rebellion, da-da-da-da, ga-ga-ga, militia, fight, 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 fight. In the end, not very many people died. Heck, Daniel Shays, the guy who led the rebellion, he was pardoned by the governor of Massachusetts, left, moved to Vermont, and he lived out the rest of his life there and died in 1825 a nobody. But he's in a history book. So here is a sweet picture of Shays' Rebellion. Happened in the dead of winter. You see the militia trying to attack this army depot. No, it didn't work. This is actually a real monument. It was a monument made to the last battle of Shays' Rebellion, February 27th. Okay, so in the end, the Argos Confederation, bang, and the Constitution, the one we know today. So that is going to be the discussion for the next video. Peace out, South Hills.